So, happy Halloween, everyone! Real quick, before I jump into this video was not going to have a "Hey, what you drawing" segment, because for once I'm recording the audio for this and the one that comes before it, before doing the art, because I had time, I had an opening, so I wanted to go ahead and just sit down and get the audio done and recorded. So I have no idea what the visuals are for this, but given that this is a happy Halloween video, it's gonna be something spooky or Halloween themed in the background. Now that said, we've all had some spooky experiences, right? I'm certainly no stranger to them. I've had a bunch. There's some that I won't tell yet, just because they're very, at least the way I can think of them is they're very imagination running horribly away with me when I was a kid. But that aside, let's jump into some of the spooky experiences I can share. Now, I will have, it'll be linked down in the description, kind of an old Storytime video that I did, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember, because the last couple of years for me have blurred together a little bit. But I did have one, it was titled, I think, The Old Theater. I don't even remember if that theater is even still around anymore. I know they don't, they used to let people, like, rent out rooms in it for parties and things, because that was where my partner had her Sweet 16 birthday party, because that's where that experience happened. But I don't think anymore that they do things like that with it. I know for a while we'd have ghost hunting groups around here go in there. But I did tell that story of the experience that I had there, and that will be linked down below in the description. And I believe that one was done with a speed paint in the background if you guys want to listen to it. But past that, let's get on with the other experiences I've had. So I know all of us have had some spooky, creepy experiences. That is just a staple of existing, I think. We're all going to have things that spook us out, that spook us or freak us out. Apparently I can't talk today. That's nothing out of the norm, is it? But I've definitely had a few that caught me off guard. Some of them were active things that happened. Others were just those off-putting feelings that you can get about things sometimes that just make you uneasy. Now, I mentioned the old theater, and that's one of those that started out with an uneasy feeling, and then something happened. Namely, just out of nowhere, getting essentially almost pushed down a set of steps. But beyond that, I do have a few others. The first one that comes to mind really is the house I grew up in, my grandparents' house. When I was older and I got my own room, I can remember I would have to go through, to get to my bedroom, I'd have to go through the laundry room, which had the stairs down to the basement. Now keep in mind, there was nothing spooky that ever actually happened in the basement, because if I'm not mistaken, my family were the ones who actually dug it out. Like, the house did not have a basement before they lived there, and then later it had a basement that they dug out and all that. So it's not like anything really creepy, awful happened down there before they lived there. That's just not the case. But I would always get these really spooky feelings in the laundry room where the stairs down to the basement were. To the point where if it was nighttime, at least if it was nighttime and everybody had gone to bed, unless I had to, I was not coming out of my bedroom. And if I did have to, like I had to run to the bathroom or something, I would go through the laundry room as quick as I possibly could, making as little noise as I possibly could to get from point A to point B. And it was just, it creeped me out so bad. I always had this feeling like something was going to grab me and drag me down to the basement. Now, I have no context at all for how the laundry room may have felt, before the basement, because I don't remember how old my family was when, or how old, like, my mom was growing up there whenever it was dug out or something. I really should ask, because I don't remember, but she might. But regardless, just for some reason, I had this awful, unsettling feeling. I don't know if it was just because it was stairs to the basement or what, but it was so weird. Now, thinking back on it now, I do wonder if, like, spooky vibes could have been coming from the fact that literally where I live, look anywhere and there are probably old coal mines underneath places, old mine shafts and things like that. I know that not long ago they filled a good few of those old ones with, like, concrete, including ones that were on our hill. They came and they drilled down and then they, like, filled it with concrete. Because I distinctly remember that, because there's, like, this small little area that has concrete where they drilled down and filled it that wasn't there before when I was growing up. And I remember it was just a few years ago, I think, that they finally did that. And so I don't know, I have a little bit of a theory that maybe some of the spooky feelings come from the mine shafts that were all underneath everything, because that just kind of happens. It's like, I know down near the old basketball court at the old school that's not there anymore, but used to be, and now it's just a big empty lot, and they bulldozed over the basketball court now, so that's not even there anymore, and I was really sad about that. But going down there was an area where we always had to kind of jump over a thing. Like, there was this really deep ditch. And it wasn't necessarily wide, but it was deep. And I remember a lot of people talked about that maybe there was a, if you stepped wrong around there and you were in the ditch, you might end up sliding down into an old mine shaft. And of course that freaked us out, so we always avoided that, despite sometimes, okay, we didn't always avoid it. Sometimes we got a little bit too close to it, closer than we should have, because we were curious and we were dumb kids. But usually my mama would spot us and yell for us to not. So for the most part we didn't. And but to tie that back to the other one, there was mine shafts under where we live. So I think that might have been where the spooky vibes came from with the laundry room in the basement. At least it's a little bit of a theory. I'm trying to resist the urge to make a game theory joke, because game theory joke and it's easy, low-hanging fruit. But this little tangent does tie back into one of the things I'm going to talk about. Now, like I said, the bedroom that I was in once I had my own room at Mama's was back there, and you had to go through the laundry room first to get to it. Well, I want to say it was right before 8th grade. No, it was in 8th grade. It was like spring of 8th grade, because we were getting ready to take a trip to the beach. We were going to be down there for a week, and I remember I was actually really mad about it, because it was the week of my birthday, and yes, we were going to the beach for a week, but we were also missing the whole standardized test thing. By that point, it was called the West Test. I don't know what it's called other places. I just know here it's called the West Test, that yearly standardized test that you take. So I was mad because I was in 8th grade, and every year at the end of the standardized testing week, you got to take the 8th grade field trip, which was down to, I think it was to Carowinds. And I was really excited to go, and then not long before, I was told that instead we would be going to down to the beach that week. And I was so mad, because I was a theme park nut. I still am, I just haven't really had an opportunity to go like I did whenever I was younger. So I was just so upset, and I remember being mad that whole week, especially because, if I'm not mistaken, on my birthday, I was supposed to pick what we were going to do, at least like as a fun thing that we were going to do, and I resigned myself to picking mini golf, and then it rained that day, and we didn't get to, so I was really mad that week. I was not happy. But to digress, because I had to go on that little tangent, I spent the whole night before we left, I spent the night with a tape recorder, like a cassette tape recorder that my papa had, because he was a claims adjuster, so he would have to call people and, let them know he was recording the call, get their permission to record the call and all that, and to get people's statements from car accidents, house fires. I know we saw one time the house that had been hit by a mudslide, floods, all that kind of stuff. That was the kind of stuff that he did, and I'll have to talk about that at one point, just because I found it very fascinating, and I considered for a while being a claims adjuster, because it's very interesting. It's like being a detective for accident sites and for insurance purposes. It's really interesting, because you have to use a lot of investigative skills, but I'm getting distracted again, because no matter how many notes or scripts I have in front of me, I have to go on tangents. But to get into the spooky part, he had a tape recorder, so what I would do was I would play something on my TV, because I was getting a bunch of songs from movies I liked and things like that, so I would put in, I know a couple of them were actual VHS tapes, and I had this neat little, Walkman tape player that I absolutely loved, and of course I had the mixtape that my partner made for me back then. I still have it somewhere. I think she made 2 different ones for me, and I still have them, and of course I was going to listen to them, but I wanted some of the other things that I like to listen to too. So I would play them, and I would put the voice recorder before the tape. I'd start it recording, and I would set the microphone right beside the TV speaker so I could record it, and I think it was mostly songs from Disney movies. And then once it was done, I would play it back and make sure that it recorded well. Funnily enough, it was actually pretty decent audio, especially considering it was a microphone on a tape recorder recording from this dinky little, baby's first awful TV that was teeny tiny. And I remember remember trying to play video games on it was awful. And when I say video games, I'm talking like PlayStation 2 games, if I remember correctly. Actually, no, I know I remember correctly. But it was one of those itty-bitty TVs with the awful speakers and awful sound. And here I am with a little microphone in front of it. Well, the really interesting thing was, and I remember this so distinctly, because Papa came at one point to check on me and see why I was still awake. But that happened after this. This happened first and freaked me out. I recorded a song and I played it back. Now keep in mind, the only people in this house that night were my mama, my papa, my sister Andy, and my brother Dee, and me. Because if I'm not mistaken, the next morning, Mom and Dad picked us up and we went. Or this was a couple days before. One of the two. Regardless, I was recording audio and those were the only people in the house. So the only adult man in the house was my papa. Was my grandpa. And so I'm listening back to this audio, and the weirdest thing was that I replayed the audio on the VHS to make sure that wasn't anywhere in it, especially because it was loud, it was distinct. It wasn't like I could have just missed it. And when I played it back, there was this man's voice, and it was not my papa's voice, that just went, "Hey," on beat with the music, and it freaked me out so bad. I remember it to this day. It still kind of gives me this spike of anxiety and makes my heart race a little, because it was out of nowhere, and I think this was at 3 in the morning, 2:33 in the morning, and it freaked me out, because where did this come from? Where did that noise come from? What was that noise? I don't know. It was freaky. And to this day, I don't know what it was. And I don't remember if I ever told anybody. No, I think I told my sister about it. But it freaked me out, and I didn't end up keeping the recording. I recorded back over it because it freaked me out so bad that I just re-recorded the song over that section of the tape. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that, no. And like I said, my papa came to check on me afterwards, and it was a good 30 minutes after to see what I was doing still awake. And I just didn't say anything. I just told him, I'm recording music for my tapes so that I can listen to it on the way down there. And that was it. I didn't bring up the spooky voice or anything. It was weird. And like I said, that one happened when I was in 5th grade. No, that one was 8th grade. I do have a spooky, I keep getting them mixed up because I do have a spooky experience that happened back in 5th grade. And it also ties back to 5th grade in regard to the beach trip, because the first time we went down to that beach, I was in 5th grade. That's why my brain keeps jumping to 5th grade. But the house that we lived in with Mom and Dad in 5th grade, we had another spooky experience. Now that house, it was pretty big, and me and my brother and sister, we all three had our own rooms there. At whatever house we lived in with Mom and Dad, that was a rarity. I actually think that was the only time that we did actually have our own rooms. And this house kind of creeped me out, just because it was so big, and the stairwell to upstairs, it made it just feel so cavernous at times. Now, we had complete run of the upstairs, because there were 3 bedrooms upstairs. You had all 3 of us kids upstairs. Mom and Dad's was downstairs. The computer room was downstairs, and the band room was downstairs. And those were separate rooms. There was literally 6 total bedrooms in this house. And this house was huge. And I think because of that, it felt very spooky at times. But the spookiest thing was one night, I was in bed. I was usually awake. I've always been a bit of an insomniac. It takes me forever to fall asleep. So because of that, I hear things, and I would hear things in the house. And this was well after Mom and Dad had gone to bed. And I do have to say, to preface this, I do have to say that I knew pretty well that this particular house, the floor creaked a lot. And the place where it creaked the most was right in front of the door that went down to the basement. Now, with the way this house was constructed, it was an above ground basement. But I remembered really distinctly that the floor would creak, horribly, down in front of the basement. And there was one night where I know, from what I remember correctly, the basement door, the little, it was one of those sliding locks, was left unlocked, and then out of absolute nowhere, completely nowhere, the sound of it just being jerkily slammed into place, locked. I heard it from upstairs. The place where my bedroom was, it was directly over it, so I could hear it really well. But the weird thing was that there was no creaking at all. And you couldn't get close enough to reach it. Even my dad couldn't get close enough to reach it, to reach the lock, to shut it, or to lock it, without stepping somewhere that creaked. And there was dead silence, and then just that noise. And then by the time we got up when we got up the next morning, I think Mom checked it and found it was locked, which is a good thing because we lived in an area that was not exactly great, but at the same time it was really weird. It was left unlocked and then we got up and it was locked. And nobody had actively done it, so essentially, I think half the family is still convinced to this day that something spooky actually locked the door to the basement, which, again, not complaining, it was not a great idea. If somebody had gotten into the basement, they could have come into the house, and that would have been bad. But it still was freaky. And now with that kind of thing, it actually makes me think, other spooky places that I've been. We went to this place, it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in our state. It's called Harper's Ferry. And funnily enough, we had a spooky experience in a hotel room up there. And it wasn't like it was some historic hotel. It was I actually think it was like one of those little itty-bitty motels. But I remember we were excited because we went on a trip up there with my grandparents. I think Papa had a claim up that way that he had to go on. So we stopped and got to actually really enjoy the scenery up there too. And there's like some really good museums and things up there. If you ever get a chance, I really advise going, especially if you have an interest in history, especially like Civil War history. Honestly, Andy could tell you way more about it than I could. That is her specialty, that is her focus, and I definitely think that it would be beneficial to look into it. It's very interesting. But we were so far away from home, because that is a good bit away from home. So what we did was, rather than come home that day after we went through the different museums and places like that up there, well, we figured we'd stay the night and come back the next day. Now, my sister and I especially, me and Andy thought that was really cool, because with the way that things were set up, Dee was going to be in the room with Mama and Papa, while me and Andy had a motel room to ourselves, which was awesome, because we were like, yeah, it was right next door, but we didn't care. We had the hotel room to ourselves, and that was what mattered as far as we were concerned, and it was fun. And, well, we're in there, right? And there's a little mini fridge. We had some sodas that we put in the mini fridge, and that was really fun, because it was just really cool. We felt like cool kids. We felt like such big kids. And then at one point, and now keep in mind, with the way that this was, the door to the mini fridge could fall open if you didn't shut it all the way. Just because there was a slight angle, it's hard to get anything completely level where we live. Things are going to likely fall closed or fall open. It happens. That is the way that things are. There's no avoiding it here. It's very difficult to get things perfectly level. It's actually why I need a leveling board to work with resin again. So we knew that if we didn't shut the door to the mini fridge all the way, it would fall open. Well, we had it open for a second. I think it was to grab a soda, and I was getting ready to it was a 2-liter. I was getting ready to put it back after we'd gotten some, so I just didn't bother to shut it because I'm a kid and I wasn't thinking about that. And then the door to the mini fridge just kind of slammed shut out of nowhere, and I mean slammed. And like I said, the way that this was at an angle, it could fall open, but it couldn't really fall shut. Well, we freaked out immediately, and Mama had to come and stay in the hotel room with the two of us for the rest of the night, while Papa stayed in the other one with Dee, because I think Dee was already asleep, because he, for some reason, even as a little kid, he's like, I'm ready for bed, can I go to bed now at like 5 p.m.? So he was already asleep, and yeah, Mama had to come and stay in the hotel room with me and Andy for the rest of the night, because we were too freaked out to sleep. And it freaked us out so bad. But I think at the moment, that's about all the really spooky experiences I'm going to go through. But it freaked us out. It was spooky. Because here we are, we're chilling, we're watching stuff on the TV, and then just slam! And it was awful. It scared the heck out of us. And it did not help that all day, it was in fall too, so it was getting close to Halloween. It didn't help that like all day we were seeing stuff about ghost tours being advertised. So, and I really wanted to go on one of the ghost tours. We didn't get to, probably for good reason, because back then my brain would take anything and just latch onto it and run away with it. To the point where, and the majority of these are probably just my brain just running away with things. And I'm aware of that as an adult, but it's still cool to think about spooky experiences. And honestly, those were fun, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. Because, yeah, they freak me out, but it also is just a testament to being a kid for the most part, and letting things just freak you out, but my imagination would run away so bad that for the most part, I wasn't allowed to watch things like Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps or even Courage the Cowardly Dog a lot of the time. Now, I would sneak and watch them anyway, especially Courage the Cowardly Dog, because it was animated, and I was about to say I was an animation nut. I'm still an animation nut. I love it. And my mind would just always run away from me with it, and make anything that was slightly spooky into something that was just horrifying. But I'd like to know, have you guys had any spooky experiences? Or even with everything, have you guys just had experiences where you saw something kind of spooky and your mind just ran away with you and it got really out of control and freaked you out? Because I had quite a few of those. But happy Halloween, and thank you guys so much for watching. I want to go ahead and say a huge thanks to my patrons, Salmon and Inside Chaos, and have a fun and spooky evening, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!